Hi Ross, here's your video feedback for component 1 of the animation simulation module. Okay, so I've had a good look through everything, but we'll take a little journey through it together. I'd like to start off with your little sequence here. So again, I've had a good look through this already, and it seems like you've got, first of all, everything's laid out nice and neat and tidy. Things are appropriately named. You could perhaps have had some further naming conventions, maybe. So things, if you had some further controllers, maybe for the feet with foot rolls and so on, you might have had some elements in there which would have helped out, I guess. But generally speaking, everything looks good. Yeah, I don't see any issues there with crumpling of the mesh or tearing. It stretches in the right sort of places, which is good. I'm pleased you have done both the left and the right side. That's usually a fairly telling piece, and you look like you've got it to work pretty well underneath that armpit, which is good. I did like what you'd done with the fingers, by the way. I know we're going to come to that bit, but they do articulate very well, which I thought was good. Okay, so you've got a good controller for the wrist there, which functions well. One thing I would say is it seems to me like you're selecting your controls the left-hand side here. That suggests that you've got this set up so you have to select the group to control the element. So what would be better with an animator in mind would be that the animator is working on this and they're clicking directly in the viewport here and making their changes directly. So you shouldn't really need to be clicking in there. So it seems to me like you've linked things perhaps to your the parent of an object rather than the object itself, perhaps. Oh, not in this case, certainly. So that does work. So that's not the case for these. Again, these function well. The rotational limits seem to be in place for this. And in addition to that, the rotational axes are working effectively as well, which is pleasing. So you're not getting any misalignments. It's not rotating around the wrong axis or any of those kind of things. Joint orientations look good. And I'm pleased that you've seen the importance of having individual controls for each of your fingers and then the thumb. Again, your full vector constraints work well also, which is good. It's a bit of an issue here towards the middle of the chest there. So when we rotate the head back, there seems to be some points which are also moving here. That would have been fairly easy to rectify. Just go into your weight painting tools and just paint those out. See it there also. Shouldn't have been tricky to fix that. So you should have seen that and done it. Shouldn't have been a problem. Again, foot works well. Good sort of creasing behind the knees and so on. The knee control works well also. A little bit of stretching and the groin area here. You could probably just kind of soften that, smooth that out a little bit. You've got this bone working, so it's kind of pointing towards that central bone, that toe bone all the time as well. Yeah, it's good to show that both the left and the right side work as well. I don't see any issues with that. There's probably a little bit of exaggeration there with the rotation inwards towards the palm. You could probably just cap that off for the joint limitation, I think. Thought there may be some intersection there of the mesh. Okay, so it's clear that for both arms, the inverse kinematic system is functioning well. No issues in terms of the interaction with that for the animator. It's a shame in here that what you've not done is demonstrated your IKFK setup. I see that the forward kinematic, or rather the inverse kinematic structure work there, but the forward kinematic with the rings you've got here, you've not actually demonstrated that. It's a shame because you've clearly set the thing up, so why not demonstrate it? So remember the key to putting together a video screen capture like this is that you can go to all the details, show us what you've done, all the ins and outs. Now you spent a lot of time working through the fingers, but there also seems to be some bones set up for the feet as well. So presumably in there you could have demonstrated other things with the feet, or did you put in any foot rolls, any tiptoe kind of rolls, or any banking of the foot, or anything of that sort of thing? That should have been in there. You should be demonstrating that stuff. Anyway, let's move on to the next video clip. Okay, so these look like they've been animated using inverse kinematics just because of the way that the elbows are working, but that's fine. Yeah, so I mean that kind of does show a reasonable sort of figurative animation, a reasonable kind of range of motion. But one thing I would say is it's a bit of a letdown for this is just the way they've rendered it. It's rendered this kind of almost plasticky sort of finish, which kind of means we're kind of missing some of the detail of the mesh. I think to have lit this properly, it could have been in grey. That's fine, but I think to have not had it kind of all specular like this and lit it properly so we get some sort of ambient occlusion element in there would have really shown some of the details of what you've done there. And similarly, one of the things we asked for was not just a figurative type animation, but also perhaps putting together some sort of range of motion type animation, a full range of motion. So wrists, elbows, shoulders, individual finger articulations, head, left, right, slight rotation, knees, ankles, hips, and so on. So one of the things I think it's kind of missing with this is probably you taking it to the next level. Let's say it's going beyond where we looked in the tutorials and seeing what you could add to it. So if I just go back a clip actually in here, one thing that strikes me about this is you've kind of got everything that I helped you set up in the tutorials, and I know it's still an arduous task. You've still got to jump through a lot of hoops to get there. But I think you could have added like one for the hip, a controller for the hip area, a few for the spine, perhaps. Maybe a further control system down here for these bits, or at least something which showcases how you set up this attribute editor to have controls or something. Again, I think that's a little bit of an omission there for you. But that said, what you have done actually is very, very good. Okay, let's move forward to the facial stuff. Okay, so immediately before we even play this, one bit of positive feedback I'll give you is that it's great to have named these. The number of people who have submitted this and not actually added any names for any of the control systems in there, you wouldn't believe. Remember the thing that we said, it says if you're handing this over to an animator, would they be able to use it effectively? And with those labels in there, yes they would. It would help them along the way. So well done in doing that. Anyway, let's check out your rig. Okay, so that certainly functions, your four-way control. Now there's obviously within that there's some scope for exaggeration of movement. So anatomically speaking, that some of these movements are pretty impossible. But that's fine. Your animator could rein that in a bit, but they've got the option. Now I would say, however, that it looks a little bit like this lip seems to become a little bit sort of spiky. We notice it as it comes across here. I'm not sure why it would lose so much sort of kind of circular volume. So technically speaking, it's working well, but I just think creatively you probably could have done with a little bit more visual reference for that element. Okay, so I'm pleased there that what you've done, you've seen the importance of having individual eye blinks, but also the addition of one which will blink both at the same time. Again, you're thinking forward, you're thinking of your animator. If they are going to go for an actual blink of the eye, chances are they're going to blink both at once. But to give them that flexibility of being able to blink individually, or maybe to wink, or to control one and slightly close one and open the other, that's good forward thinking. Your animator would thank you for that. Nostril flare, cheek puff out, that's good. Now I'm just going to stop there because I think what I would say is for the kind of the cheek blow, the cheek puff out, again I think that's fine in terms of having an overall kind of facial expression developed for that. That's neat, but I think the nostril flare, you could perhaps have done something with a left and a right. Maybe give your animator a little bit more control over that flexibility of the rig. Similarly with the brows, I like the fact that you have got one which is an overarching one, and then you've got your individual left and right brows. I think what I would say is, for a bit of kind of positive kind of criticism, I guess, what you could have done for the eyebrows, yes, have one that does both, yes, have one for the left, one for the right, but how about having like maybe 3, 1, 2, 3 that run across the brow? So you could have, you know, it could dip down in the middle towards the nose, but then be raised up here, making it, you know, looking kind of maybe angrier sort of eyes. Again, adding flexibility, so not just having one entire brow that lifts, but maybe have 2 or 3 points on that brow, which are individually articulating. It's good. So I can see you've got that set up with the bone for the mouth, which again looks like it's reasonably well weighted. Okay, good eye controller. So again, also I see that you've got individual controls for the eyes. Again, your animator will thank you for that also. But what I don't see is, again, with this is this being pushed sort of to the next sort of level. And the next level of this I'd be looking at would be perhaps having that bit where we do see the eyes move and there's a little bit of a tug of the skin around the eyelids. Something we looked at in the lectures and also in the tutorial. So I think if you'd have taken it to that level, then we're going up perhaps a marking bracket certainly, but also you're really showcasing that you can use the tool systems that I've put in place to teach you, and you can fly with them. You can do your own things. You can go beyond where perhaps I've shown you to go. But you know what is there is very good. I think, however, a little bit more use of visual reference to keep things a little bit more confined to the anatomically possible, whilst maintaining some flexibility. I think that would improve things. Anyway, so talking about visual reference, let's jump back here and have a look at your document. Research document. Okay, so again, I mean, there's some decent stuff in here. I've had a good extensive look in here. I'm pleased that you have bothered to put the effort in to actually start to look at some of these bits and pieces and how the bones are laid out, particularly when you're looking at detail like radius and ulnar rotations. It's one thing that we did look at again in the lecture and discussed in some of the tutorials as well about the rotational bones. So it's good that you're kind of considering those, but I think it would have been useful to be able to articulate how you've made this work for you. Like, how did you factor this kind of rotation into your rig? Did you manage to get that twist bone to work? No evidence of it in there, or maybe a discussion of that, some critique of what you did. Did you get it to work? Did you not get it to work? And so on. I'm pleased that you've seen something beyond the bone structure, and that is that the skin deformation. Whilst the bones themselves in a roundabout way contribute to the movement of the skin over the bone, there's other elements in there, you know, muscles, tendons, guiders, and all sorts of stuff that live under the surface. But it's true that the skin does ultimately deform. So it's interesting that you're starting to look at this kind of stuff. So that, I think, did serve you well in your final figurative stuff, as did, I think, also some of the facial stuff that you did. But I would like to have seen some more parallels between what you learned and how that applied to your work. So I think if you'd have interspersed this with maybe some screenshots, renders, some reflection on what you did for your own project, I think this would have, again, elevated this. But what is there, again, is very good. You know, the fact that you're looking at extensions and flexions, perhaps looking at rotational limits, those kind of things, that will help you. It's bound to help you in your character rig. So I do feel like you've worked well in this module. And I feel like you've learned a lot. I think if you were to do it again, I think you'd be able to push this much further. You've learned a lot from developing the control systems and so on. I'm pleased that you did take into account your animator. You did make a pretty flexible rig, both facially and figuratively. But again, I think probably a little bit more reference to the kind of layouts that other people have used would have served you well also. So all in all, it's a good semester's work, or half semester's work. Well done.